lead in the Republican presidential race with an appearance in Ames, Iowa.
We need people with an aggressive tone, and we need people with tremendous energy. And I'm your candidate, okay?
Texas Congressman Michael McCall used the weekly Republican address to speak out against the nuclear deal with Iran.
Rather than stopping nuclear proliferation, this puts the Middle East at the starting line.
On a mission given to me by Woody Shaw, Sunship, Dizzy, and John Kahn, dedicated to pursuing a piece of our cultural heritage through interviews with my music heroes, this is the Jake Feinberg Show. Folks, welcome inside the Paris Sea Palace high above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk, 1210 a.m., KEVT, Sahuarita, Tucson. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. My first guest today is one of the most influential and highly connected journalists in Playboy Inc. She is not just a Playboy playmate, but also a highly esteemed journalist who has written the definitive book on Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Club's impact on music and social justice. The book is entitled Playboy Swings, and it hits shelves this coming week. Patty Farmer, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hi, Jake. Wow, what an introduction. Thank you so much. I've been anticipating talking to you all week long. Thank you.
Oh, it really is an honor to talk to you. I don't think I sent you what I said I was going to send you, which was all those stories, and I apologize about it. It dawned on me this morning, so I guess you'll just have to trust that I know what I'm talking about.
Well, I absolutely do, and I'll still wait for the stories, so
absolutely,
it's all good.
Hey, I wanted you to talk about this book, Playboy Swings. How much can you, you have a couple of book signings coming up in New York, is that right?
I do. Thank you for asking about that. We have one at Barnes & Noble on Broadway on September 21st. And we have a lecture over at the library coming up October. So
I guess
we have a lot going on there. There's also a signing at the Friars Club on September 18th. So the word's getting out there.
I wanted to ask you, how important is it for you to get the point across of how much I hate using labels, but I'll just say the word jazz. How much is it important for you to educate or remind people how much jazz played a role in Playboy?
Well, Jake, I think it's important because it's taken all these years. So many books have been written about Playboy, about the organization, about Hugh Hefner, about the bunnies, about the mansion, but for some strange reason, the spotlight has never been put on jazz and the importance that Playboy played in jazz. And when I say Playboy, that's synonymous with Hugh Hefner, because Hugh Hefner is Playboy. The buck always stopped at his desk, and he was a huge advocate of jazz and really not only advanced it and embraced it, but made it part of almost every bit of Playboy, from the TV shows to the magazine to the Playboy clubs, the jazz festival, and the record label. So it was just jazz was in Hef's blood, and ended up being in like I said, every section of Playboy. And I think he really helped change how people looked at jazz. I don't know your opinion about that, but up until the 50s, I think people kind of looked at jazz as something you danced to. It was, had a swinging beat to it. And Hef took that and made it something that people sat and listened to. With the Playboy Jazz Festival, they came and they sat for hours and listened. In the magazine, he told the guys, it was a cool thing to put on a jazz record and have that playing in the background while you were having cocktails and later while you were having dinner and maybe making out with your favorite girl.
Right.
So I really, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I guess just coming from a younger generation, it's unfortunate that, it was popular music at that time, and it was absolutely dance music. But, I just wanted to know from your point of view, when you talk to people of all ages at the Friars Club or the book signing or I just find it to be, I think Hugh was, from all I can read from your book, and, he was not somebody who was totally self-assured in himself, but he knew what he wanted to be. And so he advocated for all these things of good taste, and jazz was one of them. Good music was one of them. I just know that people are going to come up to you and say, boy, I forgot about this, or I never knew about this. And I feel like when you were writing this book, I just wanted to know how much of an emphasis you put on saying, this is something that I want to make sure in 2015 is still part of the discussion. Because, like I said, the branding of Playboy, it has become really just about the girls.
Right, exactly. And I would take that a step further. Not that it is, still at the forefront, but that people know about it. So many people, like you just mentioned, have said, really, I didn't realize that Playboy was so involved in jazz. So, not only keeping it at the forefront, but making people realize that. People come up to me all the time if I'm giving a talk or doing a book signing, and they say, I never really put it all together. Yes, I was at the 1974 Jazz Festival, but actually there was not a 1974 Jazz Festival, but you know what I mean. I was at the Jazz Festival and I was here or there, but I never really thought about it until your book, put it out there and really connected all the dots. So it is important. It's very important to me. And I have to say, I didn't start the process knowing it all. I didn't have the idea of how important it was when I started the book and thought that I had the story to tell. I knew how important entertainment was. And it was only after my research team and myself, we started digging into all the history that, you scrape off one layer and you say, wow, I didn't realize how important they were in advancing or integrating the stages. And then you say, wow, I didn't realize how important the Playboy clubs were to give these young jazz musicians a place to play. For example, Monty Alexander, the great Jamaican pianist, he started out, he was the first piano player at the New York Playboy Club, playing with Kai Winding. And, he was just starting out. It's like really cool. And talking to him, he was saying, it gave me a place to work.
Yeah, it's funny you bring him up because Monty was a guest on the program a few months ago, and he had been playing his butt off in Jamaica, but when he got to the States, it was an opportunity to not just play and make some dough, but he also crossed paths with all these other luminaries and eventually got hooked up with guys like Ray Brown and Milt Jackson and all these guys. The question here is for Patty Farmer here, decorated journalist and just wrote a book, Playboy Swings. Let's talk about the Playboy Club before it was the Playboy Club. The closest thing that I could understand from the reading was that it was called the Black Orchid, Paulie Ruffles. Can you talk a little bit about that club? Apparently it was the hippest place to be. It sounded like a place I'd like to go to because I can't get why don't you break it down, the Black Orchid and Paulie Ruffles?
Well, I think you and I are kind of the same minds. We'd like to be transported back to the 50s with these cool jazz clubs, and the Black Orchid was sure one of them. Among many others, though, I'd have to put out there, it was just the time that there were all these great clubs. You had Mr. Kelly's, you had the Chez Paris, the Cloister Inn, that was a favorite Chicago haunt also. But the Black Orchid was, definitely a great jazz club. And Hugh Hefner and Victor Lowndes used to go there after, putting in a day's work at Playboy, and it was their office away from the office. They enjoyed the music there. They enjoyed the atmosphere and everything, the food, the drink, the company. And that was the kind of club they envisioned having control of. They would talk. And you have to realize, Jake, these were two guys. Hef and Victor were young guys at the time, mid-20s.
Oh, yeah.
And just kicking around the idea of, wouldn't it be great to have a club like the Black Orchid that we could have Mabel Mercer come or pick all the entertainment that we wanted to hear on a nightly basis. So it was definitely a guidepost for them, something that they wanted to attain. And the result was the Playboy Club, that first Playboy Club in Chicago.
Do you think that Hugh, I mean, he like we talked about off air before, I mean, he was for women's rights. He was way ahead of the curve on so many issues. But did he view jazz as a Black American art form? I mean, did he stand for social justice? And can you give an example of that?
I think it's funny, Jake, because I've been asked that question before, and after thinking long and hard about it, I don't think Hef consciously thought that way. Mm-hmm. I think he was truly one of the very few colorblind people you would ever meet. And it almost shocked him on certain occasions when he would be given a hard time for having an integrated stage. He was just, his Midwest upbringing ingrained a certain code of conduct in him, deep in him, that was just part of Hugh Hefner. And he was all for civil rights and gay rights and human rights, and like we said off air before, even women's rights. But I don't think he consciously set out and said, I am going to do this. I think he just, saw the best talent and went with that. Like Dick Gregory told me, it was a great line. I'll never forget it. And he said, Hugh Hefner didn't care if you were black, white, or purple, only if you could swing an instrument, sing a song, or tell a joke. And that really puts it in a beautiful package. It sums it up. He was colorblind.
Well, no,
so
that's
didn't.
Yeah, I think that's true. Maybe the better question is, can you cite an example of when because the Midwest was full of cultural bias, and I want to know, can you tell me a story that you discovered in your research, and it maybe is in the book, when he had to disarm people who were frightened and fearful of people that looked different than them?
Well, we are talking, the Jazz Festival was in 1959, and the first club opened in 1960. And the Civil Rights Act didn't go into effect until 1964. So when he opened the Miami Club and the New Orleans Club, they were deep into Southern segregation. And he had partners, he had franchise partners that pretty much took over the opening and the running of those two clubs. And according to the cultural dictates in those areas,
right,
and what was going on, they ran them as segregated clubs. And that just was an affront to Playboy and to Hefner, and he stepped in immediately. It was one club he bought back within 6 months, and the other one was within 9 months. And I have to say, he bought them back at a huge expense to Playboy. I think the franchise the people that were partners with them. They made like 300% for having the club 6 months. But Hefner didn't care. He was more of just righting an injustice that he saw. He was like, I don't care what it costs. We have to get these clubs back. And he then went and integrated the stages, said, we're not having integration. These clubs were restricting members. They weren't only restricting the performers, they weren't allowing black members into the club.
Right. This is what I want to get at.
So, yeah.
Go. Specifically, what were those? I forget the word you used. The mores or the customs that they were infusing in the South that he would not tolerate.
Refresh me on that, Jake.
Well, no, you were just getting into it. Aside from,
right.
I mean,
right.
What were the things that they were? What were the things they were doing that he? The reason he took a financial hit. What were the things that just were unacceptable to him?
Well, number one was restricting membership, and you have to remember the Playboy clubs were membership clubs. You bought a key, and the beauty of it, which was unique to the day, was that if you bought a Playboy Club membership, you could go to the Chicago Club or go to the Miami Club or go to the New Orleans Club. And so he had members that bought keys, and they turned up. They might have been black men, and they were turned away. They were saying, this is not a club for you. So that was just totally unacceptable. And when the news got out or got back to Chicago, which it did very quickly because Hefner kept quite an eye on everything. He knew what was going on everywhere.
Love it. It's amazing.
That's why I say when you say Playboy and Hugh Hefner, it's really saying the same thing.
Right.
But he went, bananas.
I'm laughing.
I'm actually laughing.
I'm laughing because I find it so easy to stay connected to everything in the digital age. But he was doing this back in the early '60s, which is just, I think it's fascinating. Even when he bought that back, even when he bought those clubs back in the South, he didn't never move down there. So he put it into the hands. How did he monitor? How did he monitor that things were actually being, put forth the way he wanted them to?
Victor Lowndes, in the book, I explain who Victor is, but briefly, he was kind of second in charge at Playboy for many, many years. And when the company was very young, it was Hugh Hefner and Victor Lowndes, and they were great friends, and they also really started the clubs together. It was Victor Lowndes and Hef sitting around, and Vic had gone to Hef and said, I'm getting all these letters about this club we featured in the magazine, the Gaslight Club. And this was back in the day where guys actually sat down and wrote letters to the editor, which seems a foreign concept today. Maybe they'd shoot off an email, but, to actually sit down and write a letter and put a stamp on it, they wrote to Playboy and said, where are these Gaslight clubs? And is there one in Cincinnati? Is there one in Atlanta? So Vic went to Hef and said, we should open our own club. And, they ended up opening their own club, and they each put money into it. It was Victor Lowndes, Arnie Morton from... later on he opened Morton's Restaurant, one of the great steakhouses in the country.
Sure.
And Victor and Hugh Hefner, they each put in $10,000 and opened the first club. So he had Victor Lowndes, who was of equal mind. They were good friends. They loved jazz. They held the same beliefs. And Victor took control of the clubs. So while Hef primarily took over the magazine, he always loved journalism first, and Victor oversaw the clubs. So Victor traveled around. He went from all the clubs and, hired entertainment directors and club managers. But this was the day, they lived on airplanes and just really went around to check up on things, to make sure all the clubs were abiding by all the philosophies they had set down, and that was Victor Lowndes who did that with the clubs.
We're talking to Patty Farmer. Her book, Playboy Swings, is due out this week. I wanted to ask you, switching to the journalism side, I was talking to my engineer who's a jazzer himself, and he, through his research and only through jazz history studies, he read about how influential Playboy was with the music, and but it also how did Alex Haley, what was the magic that he had that allowed him to get inside cats like Sinatra and Tony Bennett? Obviously, he wrote Roots, but that's a book, and we're talking about articles that were consistently coming out. Simultaneously as the clubs opened, you were also getting a lot of these great articles, and he was able to get to these guys. And I'm wondering not how he was discovered, but what was the magic of him as an interviewer? I consider myself a good interviewer, but he really talked to the Titans, and he got them to really open up. I mean, the story about Sinatra, for instance, is just fantastic stuff. So can you break that down a little bit?
You know what? I really couldn't tell you. That's really a mystery. Alex Haley is a wonderful author, but this was really before he was Alex Haley. That we all knew he was such a great author, and really before he honed all those skills. But he just had a way to go right to the point. And I think the first interview he did was Miles Davis. And they connected on, just some level. And he had that talent of being able to hone in and connect with each of these people that he interviewed. And he also had the luxury of picking who he wanted to interview. So I don't think, he would have picked anybody that he really wasn't interested in. So the people that he did interview were ones that he said, I want that one. And it can't be explained. There's no 1, 2, 3 formula that anyone to this day, and it's been a topic of conversation with other people, what made Alex such a great interviewer. And he was just great. It had to interest him. I forget who he interviewed, but it was some terrible, racist, the head of the Ku Klux Klan or somebody, which you would have thought he would have wanted to stay as far away from as possible. But he wanted that interview. And, oh, God, I'm...
It's all right. No, I mean,
I
think that part of the magic is that it is unexplainable. I just some of the content. I mean, I'm looking for the Sinatra quote because it is. I mean, it was like, whatever helps me make it through the night, And he said, whatever it is, could be this, that, or a bottle of Jack Daniels. And then, of course, Chris Christopherson wound up writing a song about that. I mean, this is stuff that is scintillating for me because that totally new information. I think that people will really, when they read this book, it goes beyond just Hugh Hefner opened some key clubs and promoted jazz. I mean, there are just incredible testimonials to the sort of dual tracks that were going on at the same time. You had this, multi-sensory entertainment going on, and you also had a magazine that was dedicated to people like Satchmo and Miles and Dizzy and Sonny Rollins and all that stuff. So it's just, sometimes when you go into things, once you find your voice, as you know, you're not really fearful of anything. So you can look somebody in the eye, they're just a person, and, you open them up and either reveal them to be a good person or who they really are. And so I just, to me, it was like, Hugh Hefner, for the audience, when Playboy in its getting off stages, the guy was sleeping in his office, and he would open the door every morning with 2 cans of Pepsi and say, let's get ready. Let's get the day going. I mean, it was before the days of Starbucks. So he had two Pepsis, and he was ready to rock. But I mean, the idea that he always looked for the cream of the crop, talent-wise, writing-wise. And so Alex, were there other unsung writers that you wanted to talk about that other than Alex?
Oh, my goodness. You could go on and on. One that really stands out and that I didn't know going into the project was Ian Fleming. Back in the early days of the magazine, Ian wrote either 7 or 8 short stories for Playboy. It was a way to make money. He wrote short stories. And ultimately, I think all of those stories made it to the big screen, one of them being on Her Majesty's Secret Service. They were the James Bond movies, of course. But, they started out as short stories in Playboy magazine. And Ian Fleming wrote many articles for Playboy, and he and Hef became friends. Even in Diamonds Are Forever, I don't know if you remember seeing Sean Connery or James Bond when he pulled out his wallet for something. Right next to his license to kill was his Playboy Club card. So, that's right there in the movie. It shows you how cool it was to have a Playboy Club card, that even James Bond had it. And Ian Fleming was the guy Hef went to when he was thinking about opening clubs down in the Caribbean. He asked Ian, he said, where do you think a good place would be? And Ian said, I put James Bond down in Jamaica an awful lot because I love Jamaica. And Hef says, if it's good enough for you, it sounds good for me. And they opened the Jamaica Club, just to show you how that friendship grew from those early years when Ian was writing short stories.
Well, and also,
but you're right, he picked the cream of the crop.
I was going to say, I interviewed a gifted percussionist, King Arison, and King is from Bahamas, and he actually was in one of the 007 films, and but he also played 6 conga drums, and Sean Connery at the time discovered him and brought him to the States. There's a lot of interconnection going on.
Wow.
Really impressive stuff, and it's near and dear to my heart. So, Patty, we have a piece of music here I wanted to play for you, and I want you to just relax, listen to it, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Perfect.
Music on the Jake Feinberg Show, brought to you in part by the Circle Tree Ranch, Abbott Taylor Jewelers, and the Stereo Hospital. Thank you so much for supporting this program so that I can play music like that on KEVT Power Talk 1210. Patty, I know you're not going to know the date. Do you have any idea who that band might be?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here, Jake.
It's okay. No, I
don't. Who
that
is
was
it?
that was from 1982 Playboy Jazz Festival. That was that incarnation of Weather Report with Joe Zawinul and Wayne. It's okay. I don't know if I'd get it either, but if I had to do it, just an earfold test. But Wayne Shorter on saxophone, and it's great. It's on YouTube, and you just see. It's interesting. In '82, at that point, we had entered the era of the guitar hero. Disco had just infected our country. Clearly things were changing. And I'm wondering where you were at going back in the 70s, if you had any contact with Hugh or how Hugh felt the music was changing. I know people make a big deal, and I love the whole idea of the fusing of funk and blues and rock with jazz, the way Miles did it. But Hefner wanted people, like you said, if you could swing an instrument. I mean, it was not your Ramsey Lewis, Dave Brubeck jazz. It was changing a lot. And I just wanted to know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at the reason I say that they pan out at the Hollywood Bowl and you can see the whole crowd, but it's not dance band music anymore. They're sitting down, and just give me your thoughts on when you fundamentally saw a profound shift in what I call melodic improvisation, and most people call it jazz.
Well, you had the smooth jazz came in also. So it was just taking many, many forms. And that was probably, I didn't experience it firsthand. I was too young. I really started noticing it or appreciating jazz more in the 80s. That was when I was experiencing it firsthand. Of course, I listened to all the great folks from back in the 50s. But I think it was, the 80s that started just branching out into all kinds of crazy venues or, crazy directions with the fusion. You had distinctions between East Coast and West Coast jazz, with the West Coast being, again, the smooth jazz and the East Coast purists, poo-pooing that. But, I have to tell you, I like it all. I think there's a place for all of it, which is, that's music. Evolution is part of the art form.
Sure. Did Hugh, what did Hugh say? I know he had a quote about when it was changing into rock and fusion. He had a quote about it. How did he feel about that change?
Well, Hef tried to support all the arts. I think he would have preferred not getting into rock that much.
Right.
Yeah.
No, because you have to realize.
But he did, showcase a little bit of the lighter rock, at the festivals. Not so much so, and I have to take a step back. That Weather Report from 1982, that was, an amazing surprise. Darlene Chan, when I asked her to pick, 5 of her most favorite shows from all the years that she and George Wein produced it, that was one of them. She said Weather Report 1982 was just one of her all-time favorites.
Well, it has that spiritual quality to it. You can look, you can see Wayne Shorter. He is searching. He's trying to transcend. Zawinul's egging him on. And I agree with you. The evolution of art is constant. It's just that when Playboy really started to cook, it was the most fertile time in jazz music. It was just so palpable, and it's just just to see it change over time, and the whole not just the fusing of music, but the consolidation of radio and the lack of freeform radio, and in some ways we're living in a more restrictive time now than ever before when it comes to people being able to hear a lot of different music. I got to tell you, we got another tune here, Patty, and I'm really excited to play this for you, and I think you're going to get this one. So just settle in, and we'll come back.
Okay.
Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Last Saturday night I got married. Me and my wife settled down. Now me and my wife have parted. I'm gonna take another stroll downtown. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams.
All right, Patty, what do you got for us?
Wow, you went off in a totally different direction.
That's the
there.
Jake Feinberg Show for you.
Good night, Irene.
Oh, yeah, that's the Jake Feinberg Show. But do you know who's doing that? You know who's singing that?
I don't.
That was somebody, a staple, if not the number one artist on the Playboy label, Mickey Gilley.
Mickey Gilley.
Yeah.
I was just, yes, right as you were saying, it's just, yep.
No, but here,
right in. Good night.
Yeah, this is one of those things. I thought it was one of the most captivating parts of Playboy Swings because you can get so enamored with the ascension that you lose track of these, the what became of the label. Whenever I see that bunny label from the early 70s, I know I'm in for a treat because, like we were just talking about, the art was changing, and Hugh and his cohorts were making an honest effort to incorporate all kinds of music. And I wanted you to talk about that, and also, Barbie Branton.
Barbie Benton.
Yeah, Barbie
Benton. Barbie Benton.
Barbie, can you talk about that part? How you worked through that part of the book, and what was fascinating to you about that time period of Playboy Records?
Well, Playboy Records, it was, it's almost like the record label was, late in life child. I'm trying to think of a word to describe it, because it really didn't get the attention, I think, that it totally needed to survive, to thrive even, because it could have been a lot more than it was. And it was very successful. They had the King Cousins, did some, I think, chart-topping records for them. Mickey Gilley, of course, had some number ones, Joe Frank and Reynolds, but they did go more into country. And maybe, that was Barbie's influence. And for any of your audience who might not know who Barbie Benton is, Barbie was Hugh Hefner's girlfriend for many, many years, and very influential. She had a lot of influence. She actually brought him to L.A. from Chicago. They moved from the mansion in Chicago, which was the Playboy Mansion, to a place she found in Los Angeles, and to this day is the Playboy Mansion West. I don't know why they call it Mansion West, because it's the only mansion there is. Right. But Barbie gravitated towards country music, and she really liked country music. She actually recorded some records with Mickey and was very influential in making her taste known and have, indulged them.
What can you...
and Barbie went on to Hee Haw, actually, for anybody who knew that show.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, and I'm telling you, there are some sleeper... I didn't look up the discography, but there are some really sleeper albums, probably only maybe 100 pressings of it, but just some wild stuff on that Playboy label. It wasn't Sonny Rollins and Bob Cranshaw, but it was what it was. And I Patty, can you talk to the audience about... just the way you communicated with Hugh during the book process and the kind of information he was able to give to you and your current relationship with Mr. Hefner?
Well, I, of course, did speak to Mr. Hefner many times, but most of my real research was done in the way we all do research. So it was pouring through the archives and the records, and Hef, was more for background. I'd go and ask him, what did it feel like to do this or to do that? And I saw Hef as recently as 2 weeks ago. I was lucky enough to go up to the mansion on a Saturday night and have fried chicken and mashed potatoes and watch Picnic with he and his wife and his brother and a couple other fun people. So he's still, interesting and out there and knows what's going on and will give you his opinion about changing music tastes, where he still likes the music that he liked, which was pure jazz, and he likes his movies noir. We watched Picnic. So, Hef is amazing.
Yeah.
He's almost 90 years old, and he's still Hugh Hefner.
Patty, we're going to do part 2 after you get back from New York, but I wanted to talk to you about, the most satisfying thing that you took away from this process and what you'd like people to know about the book and why they should buy it.
Well, the most interesting thing and heartwarming thing to me was finding out all this information. I went into this process with preconceived ideas, kind of the broad strokes of finding out and letting my readers know about the entertainment that Hef encouraged and provided work for. And I just found out so much more. I found out about his, not only his drive to integrate the stages, but as Sonny Rollins told me, he was dedicated to the advancement of people of all colors, all persuasions, all genders. So that was very heartwarming and something I really did not know. And that he really did it out of personal beliefs and not out of any kind of profit motive. Many times he sent his attorneys around the country for civil rights help, that people never heard about. It wasn't like he said, well, we're going to go and help Lenny Bruce fight this battle, or we're going to help Dick Gregory with the civil rights situation, and then we'll publicize it and we'll come off looking as good guys. He never did that. People didn't know about all the behind-the-scenes help he provided around the country for advancement of civil rights. So that was very new to me. Again, I knew the broad strokes, but all the small instances, talking to Ramsey Lewis about what he did, talking to Sonny Rollins, talking to, the waitress at Lake Geneva, so it was just very eye-opening to me.
Yeah, there was nothing premeditated about what he felt. It was all organic, and normally when those things are natural like that, that's when the most beautiful things occur, and that's what happened. So, Patty Farmer, I wish you a safe and successful journey to New York, and I hope the book tour and the book gets off to a great start. And we'll be in touch. One day I hope to get some chicken and waffles with you and Hef. All right?
Oh, that would be a perfect date. And I just love chatting with you so much. It gives me a chance to talk about what I love to talk about. And hopefully I'll get my quiz right next time. I'll have all the answers.
Just listen. We all need to be humble. We all need to be humbled once in a while. But seriously, have a ball. I had a great time, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay?
Thank you so much, Jake. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye. We'll be right back on the Jake Feinberg Show with Jerry Grinelli.
I ride a line of town, or you go down a snake whip. Take it easy, Garth. Don't you give me no lip.